Hey, how are you? Welcome to your very first lesson. I'm excited to share some great insights with you. In this lesson, we're going to explore the very interesting dimension of giving a presentation as it relates to the fear of public speaking or stress. It's a fascinating topic. The insights I'll share with you will help you if you're a novice who dreads the thought of speaking before an audience, or if you're an experienced presenter, you may find that stress sometimes comes unexpectedly out of nowhere and bites you. By getting a better understanding of what's happening, we can then start to tackle this challenge head on. So why do we get stressed at the thought of giving a presentation? Well, psychologists have theorized that what's happening relates back to the fight or flight instinct. You're preparing to meet a threat, and in this case, presenters often perceive the audience as a threat. And in deciding to fight and not flee, you're preparing yourself mentally and physically for the challenge that lies directly in front of you. Mentally, you're going to be much more alert. Your senses will be very keen. You'll be on guard. You may even find yourself talking to yourself just before your presentation as you size up your adversary, in this case, your audience. How dangerous are they? Why do they look so disinterested? How will they react to me? What if I really screw this up? In your mind, you really are sizing up a threat. So how does reacting to this threat manifest itself? It happens in different ways for different people. And the reaction also materializes in varying degrees depending on the audience, your perception of the threat, and the situation you find yourself in. For example, a speech given at a wedding is very different from a speech in front of a board of directors. However, there are a number of common physical responses that people experience when they come face to face with any audience and the stress kicks in. Here are some of the more common ones. You may have weak, wobbly knees, often shaking profusely, butterflies in the stomach or sometimes a very tight knot, hot flushed feeling in your cheek, visibly trembling hands, sweaty palms, dry throat, quivering voice, yes, a very noticeable tremor in your voice, sweat, sweat, sweat. All in all, you become a physical wreck when confronted with a public speaking situation. In fact, sometimes people start to feel and exhibit these emotions just thinking about giving a speech. So why is this happening to you? Let's drill into this a little more. Imagine you're sitting at a table having an adult beverage with a few of your colleagues after work. The discussion is flowing smoothly, and everyone is conversing quite naturally. You feel absolutely no tension or anxiety when you speak. In fact, during the conversation, you sometimes have trouble holding back from cutting off the other person before they have finished expressing themselves. However, imagine that the very next day you are asked to stand up and make a brief presentation at a meeting to some of the very same people that the evening before you were sipping a cool one with. The exact same people who you were also engaged with in a lively discussion the night before, making you now nervous. You're becoming anxious even. You rise to speak and push your chair away and maybe get a sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach. What on earth is going on? What's changed? What's happened to cause all of this stress? Why would you suddenly experience stage fright in front of your friends or colleagues? Let's take a closer look. There are all kinds of theories out there on what causes stage fright. Here's what I think. I've had the opportunity in my career to study and teach group dynamics. And looking at it through that lens, I think that stage fright happens for the most part because when you face an audience, you're no longer part of a group that's offering you security. When you face your audience, you usually face them alone. And because of this, you feel alone and very, very vulnerable. This is, in fact, I believe, one of the keys to understanding the fears most associated with giving formal presentations. Simply put, you are no longer part of a group and the security it provides. You have separated yourself physically and mentally from them, and they also have from you. You now have a new role to play. You're more vulnerable, and you have to go it alone. In many ways, it is a leadership role that you now find yourself in. As a presenter, you have automatically become a leader. And if you want to advance in your career, hey, that's a good thing. There's also another dimension to this situation. From a presentation perspective, you have switched from a conversational mode to a presentation mode. When you were having a drink with your colleagues, as mentioned, the onus wasn't on you or anybody else to carry on the conversation. As a matter of fact, you didn't have any responsibility to the group at all to contribute to any part of the conversation. When you rise to give a presentation, everything changes. You now have become a presenter, a leader. You now are engaged in a more formal form of communicating and not just in a natural conversation. And you have a role to play, both as a presenter and a leader. And it's important to accept that role. In that role, there are some key things that happen that can impact us. Let's take a look. When you're giving a presentation, the onus is entirely on you to discuss something. If you don't say anything, there will be nothing but the sounds of silence in the room. This can be very uncomfortable for both you and your audience. You know intuitively that you have a responsibility to the group. In fact, in the role of being a presenter, you had the responsibility in many presentations to carry on a one-way conversation. Your audience is looking to you and only you to keep it flowing. For many people, this creates a strong sense of discomfort, and the result in many cases is that it can lead to a lot of stress. Plus, here are two more reasons why people fear speaking in front of an audience. One, you're the focus of attention and you are in the spotlight. And that can be very nerve-wracking. This is a fundamental fear for a lot of people. They start to think of things that can go wrong when people are focused on them. They start to think of worst-case scenarios. What if something goes terribly wrong? What if the computer fails? What if you can't remember what you're supposed to say? What if someone asks you a question you can't answer? What if that person is your boss? What if, what if? And two, there's also the fear of outright rejection. In essence, you really want to be accepted by your audience, by the group, and therefore one of the things that people fear is rejection from the group. All of this is compounding the perceived risk when you're in front of any audience. There's one additional risk you may fear if you find yourself speaking in front of some of your colleagues. The way you handle yourself in front of your coworkers may in your mind have a profound impact on the future of your job and career. If you're timid and nervous, you may think it could have a negative impact on the way in which you are perceived by your boss and your peers. And you fear that this perception could taint their view of your ability to handle and manage other aspects of your job and career. However, conversely, if your presentation is a success, it can work wonders to improve your image in the eyes of your boss and others. Your self-esteem will get a boost, and your presentation might have a fantastic positive impact on your chances for promotion and even fast-track you to a new phase in your career. That's the other side of the equation. That is what will make you a winner. So far, we've had a look at a number of reasons why people are nervous in front of an audience and how that nervousness can be reflected in a presenter's mannerisms. Now it's time to take a deep dive into some of these nervous behaviors and check out some very concrete things that you can do to address the stress. Stress manifests itself in many ways, and I want to share with you now how to tackle some of the more common things that presenters may experience. Let's get right into it and talk about the butterflies. Your gut can be turned upside down because of a pending presentation. When we talk about the butterflies, it means that your supersensitive digestive system is being thrown into a topsy-turvy imbalance because of your nervousness. What can you do to counter this? Well, you have a number of options. Some people find that it's best not to eat anything prior to a presentation. Others find it best to have something in their stomach. Whatever remedy is right for you, it's probably best not to overeat when you feel that you're going to be panicking over a presentation. This is just asking for trouble. So, accept the butterflies. They will go away, and be assured you're normal. Everyone gets them to some degree at some point in their career or during certain presentations. Another thing you may experience related to the stress of presenting is the sensation of blushing red. This, for many presenters, is an automatic reaction related to what they perceive as a potentially embarrassing situation. People blush quite naturally when they're embarrassed, and the sheer thought of being embarrassed at the start of a presentation may indeed lead you to blush a bit. The key to coping with this is to get over it. If you are blushing, so what? You are aware of this, but not necessarily your audience. In fact, when I used to conduct workshops on presentation techniques, I would sometimes play back video recordings of people who had made a presentation and were sure they had been blushing. More often than not, this was something that wasn't even noticeable to anyone in the audience or indeed me. So if you think that you are blushing, chances are that it isn't visible. You may feel a warm or hot sensation in your face. This does not mean that it will manifest itself into a full-blown blush. Also, a reddening of the neck may sometimes be something that happens to you from time to time. And that's also okay. You can easily overcome this by simply wearing a high-fitting shirt collar or wearing a turtleneck sweater or undershirt if you feel it's appropriate. Or quite often, I'll see ladies with a silk scarf tied tastefully around their neck. Sometimes it's that simple. Now let's focus for a minute on our hands. You may find that your hands have taken on a mind of their own and decide to have a free-for-all in the form of a trembling fit. If that happens, here are a few things that you can do to tackle that situation. First, recognize that it's usually temporary. It will probably stop after a few minutes, so wait it out. Second, gesture naturally and get your hands moving to wear off the shakes. Thirdly, don't do things that would draw attention to your shaky hands, such as holding a glass of water, as I've seen people do, or pointing to a visual aid with a shaky finger. Finally, you can clasp your hands in front of you in as natural position as you can. I see commentators on TV use this pose a lot. What if your throat is very dry? Imagine this. You're about to begin your presentation and suddenly realize that your throat is parched. You try to swallow, there's nothing to swallow. There's not a drop of saliva in your mouth. Try to do what the pros do and have a glass of water or a small plastic bottle of water handy. Pause to take a drink whenever you feel the urge. In fact, pause to take a drink even if you don't have the urge. A drink of water will not only cure your parched throat instantly, it will also demonstrate poise and composure to your audience. Take a look at the talk shows on TV. All of them, yes, all of them, have a glass of water or a cup of coffee for the host or the guest to drink from. Why do they do that? Because it can let the guest speaker cure their parched throat, gather their thoughts while doing this, and look kind of cool and relaxed when they do it. What about the quivering voice syndrome? Picture this. You're all alone and suddenly in the spotlight on a Zoom call. You open your mouth to begin your presentation. And what comes out is terrifying. You have a quivering, shaky, trembling voice that projects the image of someone who is absolutely terrified at being in this situation. This affliction hits most of us at some point in our speech-making experiences. Usually it strikes us right at the very beginning of a speech. Sometimes, however, it plagues us throughout our entire presentation. What can we do? Here are some key pointers that should help you to cope with or overcome this extremely nerve-wracking experience, whether you're on a video call or giving a presentation in person. You can increase the volume of your voice. Confident presenters speak with authority. And audiences usually view a presenter who has a voice louder than normal as someone who projects confidence and is speaking with authority. For example, I'm thrilled to be here today versus I'm thrilled to be here today. Did you hear the difference? Same words, different impression. Try this and you will also feel more confident and override the quiver in your voice. Or you can accept it as something that may occur at the beginning of a presentation and then simply work your way through it. Quite often it will dissipate as you get into the meat of your presentation or talk. As mentioned, take a drink of water and lubricate your vocal cords. Having a drink of water gives you a chance to gain your composure, and your trembling voice will also often disappear. You can also, if possible, engage in small talk with people in your audience before you start your presentation. This will give you A, warm up your vocal cords, B, give you a chance to break the ice with people in your audience, and C, get you in the right frame of mind to simply communicate in a conversational manner when you begin speaking to the entire audience. Let's talk about sweaty palms. 95% of people who give speeches have sweaty palms before they start. The other 5% get cold hands. Also, speaking of sweat, you'll often see a small bead of sweat crawl down the side of someone's face when they're presenting. What can you do if it happens to you? Simply wipe it off and move on. So live with the sweaty palms and the hands or the little bead of sweat. It's normal. It happens to all of us at some point. Don't sweat the sweat. The rate of your speech pattern is also something we should take a look at. If you're feeling anxious about your presentation, there's often a natural tendency to speak at a rate that's really faster than normal. I'm not sure if it's because presenters want to just plain get out of the spotlight, or if they can't stand the silence, or something else, but it's quite common. So imagine yourself in this situation and you have suddenly become a motor mouth. You sound like a runaway train. Your audience, hanging on for dear life, is trying not to let go of what you are saying as you careen through the various twists and turns of your presentation. And you, determined to get through this, take them all on this twisting, turning train ride that they'll never forget. Needless to say, the effectiveness of this type of presentation is going to leave a lot to be desired. So what's the solution? Tell yourself to slow down. Write down somewhere in your notes or cue cards or anywhere handy that you're going to slow down. You have to be strict with yourself so that you don't speak too quickly. You'll often be so wrapped up in your presentation that you just keep going at warp speed. You need to put some speed bumps in at strategic points so that it's going to remind you to slow your pace down to a reasonable level. Write down, slow down in key places so that you have a constant reminder not to rush the pace. Relax and let your passengers enjoy the ride with you. A word of caution. Ensure that you have enough time to get your message and points across in the time that's been allocated for your presentation. Otherwise, you may find yourself naturally rushing to make sure that you get through all your presentation material. How are you going to know how long it's going to take? Simple. Practice with a watch in front of you. It's absolutely the best way to get a pretty accurate idea of just how long your presentation will take. Another example of a way to judge the time required to do a presentation is to count the number of key points in your presentation and make a rough guess at how long it will take to deliver each point. If you have 50 points in your PowerPoint slides and your guess is about 1 minute per point, you'll need approximately 50 minutes to deliver your ideas. And remember, this isn't going to include any questions from your audience. So sometimes you may have to chop out some major segments in your presentations in order to make it fit into your time frame. Sometimes you may have to be very brutal with yourself and your content to make this happen. You're going to have to be bold. When you're nervous, you may also develop the annoying yet common habit of inserting words or phrases that are used as fillers between your thoughts, such as okay. How many times have you heard presenters use fillers such as okay, you know, like, or just plain or A few of these sprinkled in a speech are considered natural. Don't panic if you hear yourself saying them. However, they can become extremely irritating and distracting if you use them to excess. For example, I once had a colleague who was watching a presentation at a conference who couldn't wait to tell me how many times the speaker had used the word okay in their presentation after the speaker was finished. Here's what to do. Practice by making a video of your presentation through your computer's webcam. Then try to see if there are some filler words that you may tend to overuse. You can also say the filler word mentally to yourself. Only you're going to know that you've said it. Once you use this, it satisfies a psychological need to say it. I just said okay to myself, and you didn't hear it. You can also be a strict taskmaster with yourself. When you want to use a filler word, just say no in your head and don't do it. You can also write a note in your presentation. Write in your notes and simply say, not okay. You may need this kind of general reminder as you get caught up in the heat of your presentation. I do want to mention one more thing before we move on, and it relates to something that a lot of seasoned presenters have worked into their style. They have come to the eureka moment where they realize that a brief pause between sentences or thoughts is in fact very professional. It gives your audience time to digest what you've said and prepares them for the next idea. Watch some of the pros or politicians do this to great effect. Having to pause then is something you shouldn't have to worry about. When you find yourself there, try to just think about yourself, gathering your thoughts, and then using your next point to your advantage as you move on. You can, in fact, use all of these pauses to your advantage. Okay, let's take a moment and reflect back on what we've taken a look at. When you're giving a presentation, you'll often find that you're exhibiting some mannerisms or having some weird and unnatural reactions similar to one or all the points I've just covered. Our difficulty often lies in how we react to what is happening. And so we often overestimate the reaction we think the audience is having to what we're experiencing. We tend to be oversensitive to what's happening and believe that the audience is also extremely sensitive and distracted by this. However, it's usually only us as presenters who will notice to any real degree these physical things. Why is this? Because we're so attuned to our own bodies and are extremely sensitive to any changes that are taking place in any given moment. Unfortunately, we often let this play on our emotions in our mind, and this really can exacerbate the situation to the detriment of our presentations. Remember, the audience is not as sensitized to how you normally sound or act, and these changes are usually barely perceptible to your audience, if at all. The crucial point to keep in mind is that you're probably the only person in the room who will notice some of these physical reactions. Don't fall into the trap of allowing yourself to be oversensitive. However, there are also some habits we get into that can be distracting, such as speaking too fast. Try to ensure that you address these before and during your presentation, and you'll be just fine. Remember, above all else, be calm and be yourself. On a final note, I just wanted to assure you that stage fright is normal. It's something that you and I and every other presenter on planet Earth experiences and learns to live with. Your nervousness may manifest itself in various ways and degrees depending on the audience or circumstances that you find yourself in. You can, however, learn to minimize its impact and cope with its effects. However, please don't ever expect to be as comfortable giving a speech as you are when you're, say, watching TV or having a drink in a pub. You should always feel that twinge of nervousness, that rush of adrenaline, that air of excitement. I love it when I hear actors or musicians say that they are nervous before a performance. I believe them. It's because they want to give the audience a great experience and don't want to let them down. So it's a good thing. It says that you really care about how well you present your ideas in front of your audience, how well you come across, and that you want to make it a win-win. In the next lesson, we'll take a look at how your audience's reaction to your presentation style and your reaction to them will shape your self-image as a presenter and have a profound impact on your success as a presenter. We'll see what it takes to develop a positive attitude about being in front of any audience so that you can become a truly confident presenter. I can't wait to share these ideas with you.